portion for today. We are still in Genesis. Would like to talk to you and continue on about the flood narrative. We're in chapter 7 and starting at verse 17. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. So, again, just a common thing. The water rises, the ark, the boat goes up, and it happens for 40 days. Just a very simple thing. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. My understanding about this ark, supposedly this thing was not made for anything but just to float. That's all it was made for. It wasn't made to navigate, wasn't made to do anything. Supposedly just made to float, and that was the way it was. And it said, and the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. Now, got to take what it says here. It says that, it's what it says. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. Supposed to be a cubit, if I understand a cubit correctly, and maybe somebody can correct me if I am wrong, was the height or the length of the average man's open hand to his elbow. Not quite sure exactly how long that is. I've heard any estimates from 18 inches to a little further than that. But a cubit nonetheless, so 15 cubits. And all the flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. So everything is gone. As we talked about earlier, God is going to destroy all this. Here in this narrative, it's because of the evil of the hearts of man all the time. So everything on the dry land, in whose nostrils was the breath of life, died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. And they were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed in the earth 150 days. So God has destroyed this. Now again, we have to understand, God does this out of love. God does this because, and only God can do this, because God is the only one who understands, who will never stop evil, who will never quit evil and not do that any longer. God is the only one, and God is the only one who can actually destroy out of love. Sounds a little bit opposite, but this is what happens. Now we begin in chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. God remembers them, knows they're there, understands what's going on, so God is caring, God knows, and God is going to take care of them. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. So it appears God makes this wind to blow to kind of dry up the waters. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed, and the rain from the heavens was restrained. And the water receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Many people tried to find this thing and all that. I think you're wasting your time. It is what it is. The story is what it is. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So now it's just continually going down. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot. And she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. Now this is a little bit of contradiction here. It says that the beginning here that they began to see the tops of the mountains, but there was nowhere for the dove to fly. So this doesn't really make sense in certain ways. But again, it's part of the narrative. It's part of the story. It's just a question that I have reading the story. If there was no dry land, then how could you see the tops of the mountains? So again, there's something we have to contend with as we're dealing with this narrative. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. So again, each thing done in sevens. This is supposed to be the number of perfection. All these things have numerical value to them. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wives, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by family from the ark. So again, God is just redoing the earth here, it appears, with what is already there. Not totally recreating, but kind of a restructuring, if you will. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. So Noah, the first thing he does, builds an altar. Why? So that he can worship God. That is the first thing that is on his mind, not anything else. Noah, again, is a righteous man. Why? Because he puts God before everything else. And he took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Now again, we see this with the clean ones, the 7. He does offer sacrifice unto God. Now you got to remember, we don't hear about the sacrificial cultus of the Jewish nature until later with Moses. So what's happening here? Not quite sure if this is a priestly insertion, not quite sure what's going on here. But for whatever reason, Noah does sacrifice. But this is long before the Jewish sacrificial cult that we see happen, again, after Moses. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground because of man." So he's not going to curse it for us again. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. He's saying we're evil no matter what. We're born into sin according to Scripture. "Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done." God's not going to do that, he says. "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." So God says things are going to go on normal, and God is not going to strike us down because he's saying, look, you're evil all the time anyway. I don't know why now he has decided this. There's no rhyme, there's no reason for this. Why couldn't he have decided this before? I have a lot of questions about this story. A lot of questions arise from this reading if you want to try to be reasonable in other things. I believe the story. I believe what God is doing here. But I do have questions that arise when I read the Scriptures. Pray today that God would bless you and keep you. And again, we look forward to being with you again next Sunday. This is just by the lake, a little special time, and we hope you enjoyed the scenery. I wish it was a little more scenic for you, but we've got a little fog here today.